Today on Let It Rip Weekend, a new bill could allow law-abiding Michigan residents to carry concealed weapons without a permit. Supporters say it's part of their Second Amendment right. The bill would not change how weapons are purchased, but is it a good idea? But first, 3 MSU football players charged with criminal sexual conduct in connection to an alleged rape at a party.
I'm angry.
Coach Mark D'Antonio kicked all 3 men off the team, but could MSU have done more to prevent this incident in the first place? Let It Rip Weekend starts right now. It's time to Let It Rip. I'm Marielle Liu.
And I'm Charlie Langton. Joining us this morning, radio host Rico Baird. He follows MSU sports on his show, The Spartan Beat. And next to him, Sabrina Jackson, host of a sizzling talk show on 9:10 a.m. She's also a sex abuse counselor. Rico, let me start with you. You know these 3 players that were recently charged with criminal sexual conduct. What can you tell us about them that we don't know about?
Well, Charlie, I would say this. Unfortunately, these players put themselves in a very bad situation. We don't know what went on in that apartment building, but it's just something that, you know, I know 2 of them very well. They're from here, from the Detroit area, know their parents, know their background. They weren't like bad seeds. They weren't these, oh my God, you got to watch out for these guys. It was actually quite the opposite. When you found out the news about them, you were shocked. You were like, this can't be true. Not Donnie, not Vance. No, this isn't going on. But now they put themselves in a very precarious situation, and now we got to wait for the justice system to figure this out.
We want to make sure that they are innocent until proven guilty. They'll go through the legal system. But did something change, Sabrina? If you're a star at high school, but you go to college, does something change? Is there a culture that maybe allows people to get away with some of that we're talking about?
I won't just say that it allows them to get away with it, that when you go off to college, for any of us, you get a level of freedom, and that level of freedom spills over into sexuality. And right now, sexuality is off of the chain. You have kink behavior, you have polyamorous behaviors, and polyamorous is when people just make the decision to have multiple sex partners. It is not surprising to me at all.
Is there anything that would indicate that the school could have done more? Nationally, there is a conversation, especially at schools that have big sports programs, that would indicate that sometimes schools, in fact, underreport any instance of a sexual assault to keep that money and that good reputation for the school.
Well, I would say at least for this case, I think that they did everything they possibly could. As a matter of fact, that's why the Coach D'Antonio said he kicked him off the team, because just a week prior to that incident happening, they had a 3-hour seminar where they broke down what happened at another Big Ten school. So he said, apparently, I can't trust these guys. So whether they're innocent or guilty, they're gone. They go through training constantly, but you know, it's all about, you know, you could tell people don't drink and drive, but people still go out and drink and drive.
But if they had a 3-hour seminar a week before this alleged incident, is the seminar any good? Do people care about it?
No, I think it goes back to what I'm saying. You could teach somebody something over and over again, whether they're paying attention, whether they observe it, whether they absorb it, that's on them.
Yeah, and it's their choice. I mean, at the end of the day, when we start talking about our culture really teaches people how not to be raped. It doesn't necessarily teach you how not to be a rapist. And so there is also the thing about consent. And if this young woman gave consent, and even we don't like what they did, that's just our thing of not liking it, but it's a lot of people who get into what we consider orgies or multiple sex partners, and that's a norm.
And Charlie, I would also say this, it also comes down to most people think, well, it won't happen to me.
Yes.
This can't, well, I know better. Yeah, you taught me all of this stuff, but I know what I'm doing, and this, I'm above the law sometimes.
So does that mean that no doesn't mean no anymore?
Well, it's not even about no meaning no. It's that we have this gray area, and it's a whole term that was coined by Cosmo magazine about the gray. And the gray is people really don't know really for themselves what consent is and what it isn't in this new culture of kink and polyamorous. It's like, I don't like that, but I may like that, and because we've had the discussion about it does not necessarily mean I want to do it, but a lot of people think that if you're open to the discussion, that means you're open to the act.
Sabrina, what can you say, though? Is there something happening in colleges? You read stats like 1 in 5 college-age women experience physical abuse, sexual abuse, threats, or physical violence while at a university or while studying in school. I mean, there would seem then to be an issue, and then when you go further and say 89% of colleges reported 0 incidents of rape or sexual assaults in the year 2015, we're waiting for the next stats to come out.
Well, let me say this. That stat is on par with our national stats just in our society. When we look at 1 of every 3 women have reported being molested or abused, and so people need to understand the definition. When we start talking about rape, rape has to do with forcible activity. Molestation is a little different, and so you have people who are molested. They may be touched, they may be exposed to things inappropriate against their will. So it's a lot of that going on in our society.
But what jumps out here is the under-reporting from universities.
Absolutely.
Well, I think a lot of that just comes from the fact that maybe the person who was involved just doesn't want to go through the stigma. They don't want to go through the trial. They don't want people to find out. They just don't want to go through it. So in her mind, it's just the victim. It's her mind. It's just easier to
let it go.
Just say, you know what? I don't want to talk about this and act as if it doesn't happen. I think a lot of this happens because when you go off to a university, I guess it's a false sense of security that you can just do whatever you want. And sometimes I think it is, but I think sometimes it comes down to the question that you have to ask, and not specifically this case, but for some of the victims, was it rape or was it regret? Did you do something that you regretted and now you want somebody to pay for this because you weren't clearly thinking that evening? Speaking
of that sense of security, though, are athletes, you think, exposed to that at a higher level, especially if they're going to a school that has a big program?
I think so. I mean, I like to call it the Superman effect, where everybody's been telling you how great you are and you can do whatever you want, and that spills over into everyday life, and you start doing things you may not have done before, but because people keep telling you how great you are and how much you mean to this school, and you feel that you're impervious to everything.
But wait a minute. If colleges know that you become Superman when you get to college, and colleges know that these type of things could happen, don't you think it's important that the colleges do something more? Jones Day, Michigan State hired Jones Day law firm, same people that represented Detroit in the bankruptcy, by the way, to give a report, and they cleared Michigan State of any wrongdoing. But does that really go far enough of the reporting elements after the fact? But it didn't seem to speak anything before the act.
It's only so much you can do. It comes down to
it's going to happen, you're saying.
It's going to come down to an individual. You could preach them to your blue in the face. It's like a parent having twins, and one goes on to be a doctor and the other goes off to be a crackhead.
There was another,
Is that the parents' fault?
There was another football player, Robinson, who had before he got accepted to Michigan State, I believe, he had another incident before he got accepted. Yet State accepted him. There's, I think it's Indiana.
Austin Robertson, yeah.
Right, that's right. That's the other different set. But I think it's Indiana, correct me if I'm wrong, Rico, that said, now, we're not accepting anybody with any kind of sexual abuse record. Is that a good policy?
It is, but it also comes down to, Charlie, if you want to be real about it, college sports is big business. And if this guy can help you win, you're not paying coaches $10 million to bring in choir boys. You're not. I'm sorry. I know it's not a popular opinion.
Well, let me say this. We really have to get to the point that as a society, we have to get back to the point of really teaching a consciousness. And so it's something that's within a person. Because my son told me very early that he didn't believe in peer pressure. And I said, why? He says, because if I'm in a room with 100 people and 100 people are using drugs and I don't use drugs, I'm not going to use drugs. So if it's not in you, it can't come out of you. But we have to really check people about what's inside of them and what their conscious level is and what they're saying yes and no to.
I want to circle back, though, to what you said. They're not paying these coaches, Rico, to bring in choir boys. Does that mean that they expect on some level for something to happen when you're talking about these big athletes? No,
you don't expect something to happen, but you're going after the best person. And if you're going after that best person and something happens with that kid, it's almost like a chance that you're taking. You're hoping that you're taking a calculated risk. You want to vet them. You want to make sure they're good. So they talk to the parents, the coaches, the friends, relatives to find out what's going to happen. Now, you still can have somebody go out and do something, but they want to bring in the best player. The alums, everybody wants to see this team win.
If
And it's not just a Michigan State thing.
Not speaking of any particular school, but is there an issue with then sweeping issues like this under the rug so that their program can flourish?
Yeah, I mean, you saw that was really the big thing that went on with Baylor University, where Baylor was experiencing the best 4 seasons of their life, and they wanted to keep that train rolling.
All right, we may get more details about the actual facts when the preliminary exam happens June 22nd. Rico, thank you so much. Sabrina, thank you so much as well. And we want to know your thoughts. Use the hashtag #LetItRepWeekend. You may very well see your comments at the end of the show.
Also, is it a good idea to let law-abiding Michigan residents carry concealed weapons without a permit? We're talking about that after the break.
Welcome back to Let It Rip Weekend. A new bill would allow law-abiding residents to carry concealed weapons without a permit. Advocates say that the proposal is needed because some people with no criminal records have gotten into some trouble for carrying a concealed weapon without a permit, even though they have no criminal past. But opponents say that less regulation could lead to more chaos. Joining us here right now, Representative Sherry Gay-Danyogo and gun advocate Rick Ector. First question to you, Representative.
Yes.
You still need a permit to buy a gun. Isn't that enough of a vetting process?
Absolutely not. I stand in support with our law enforcement community, all of which are adamantly opposed to these bills that would remove the necessary requirement for training. 8 hours of training to make sure that we keep our citizens safe. More than 30,000 people are killed annually based on mistakes, people not knowing how to properly handle a firearm. I think it's irresponsible on the parts of those who would sponsor this legislation to remove that requirement. Simply getting a license is not enough. We need to know how to properly use a firearm, how to store it, and when it is legal to actually use it.
Rick?
Well, I've heard everything she said, and it really does not cover the full gamut of situations. Here, in the state of Michigan, you can legally carry a handgun without a license whatsoever. You merely have to open carry it. With regards to the 30,000 figure she meant, I think it's a little misleading because there's some suicides and some other things that are tossed in.
Does that not merit an accident?
The thing that is most important is that you have a constitutional right to carry a firearm, both on the national level and Article 1, Section 6 in the state of Michigan.
Address the issue
you have a right to carry it.
Yeah, what's the training issue? Because it seems to me, as a gun instructor, you would want everybody to have instruction.
Absolutely. I would want everyone to have instruction.
By law.
Well, not necessarily by law. Just because something is not mandated in the law does not mean that it's not going to occur. I train people on firearm safety literally every other week, and here's the thing. Even though they're required to carry concealed after getting education, there's still a very high segment of those people that don't feel comfortable carrying.
So should we have more training then?
And they will not carry until they feel comfortable, and they will get training. The thing that she's saying, well, if you're not forcing people and mandating training, people are not going to get it. I think that flies in the face of logic. People, when they are not informed about something very important, such as a firearm, will seek out that training before they start carrying a firearm.
You can't count on that, though.
Right, you can't count on that, and we're stewards of a living document, which is the Constitution. We're not talking about taking away someone's Second Amendment rights. We're talking about being responsible leaders of our state, and especially someone as yourself that would be trained in the use of firearm. Why would you take that requirement away? I mean, in this hour, every hour, 3 people lose their lives to mistakes by firearms. Why would we reduce and take away the required training for handling a firearm, something that is deadly?
It's not required training, because the thing is, if you do not carry a firearm concealed, you can carry a firearm without any mandated training.
But we're not talking about not concealed. We're talking about concealed. This law.
See, here's the thing.
This law.
People have training, and they do training. The training's not required, yet they're still doing it anyway.
You're
making the assumption that people will not seek out training with a firearm.
This law specifically deals with CCWs, carrying a concealed weapon. And now we're looking at putting our officers at a risk.
No,
all of our fraternal order, all of our police, yes they are, because now you won't even be required to reveal that you have a firearm if you're pulled over.
You don't have to?
You won't have to. You won't have to. This law.
This will not make it any more dangerous for law enforcement out on the street.
Yes, it will.
That's a
so
standard.
How do you dismiss what law enforcement?
That you all like to
how
use
do you? No, that's not an excuse.
But
how do you just totally dismiss what law enforcement has said? How do we respect them in one regard and want them to maintain order and protect us, but in totally disregard their professional expertise and recommendation that says this will put them at risk?
Absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it does. This law removes the requirement to reveal that you have a firearm on your person.
Article 1, Section 6.
The Constitution does not allow you to impugn on the rights of others.
I'm curious,
it does not mandate training under the Constitution.
But we know the obvious benefits of someone receiving training. What would be a benefit of someone not having to have that training?
What would be the benefit of someone not having the training is that we're not forcing individuals to get training. The thing is that training can happen under a wide variety of situations. It can happen in the home. A lot of people think that just because we're usually talking about Detroit or Metro Detroit and urban areas, outside of the city, firearms are more of a transferred knowledge that happens from generation to generation that we've gotten away from.
And that should be enough?
Since we've pretty much eliminated the possibility of individuals carrying in urban settings unless they have a permit, unless they want to force themselves to carry openly, which subjects them to a lot of unnecessary criticism and attention from the police, which is quite different than what happens out in the more rural areas of our state. The key thing to keep in mind is just because an individual has access to a firearm without training does not in any way, shape, or form mean that they're not going to receive training. They're just not going to be mandated to have it, and it will still happen.
If we took away the training portion of this bill for a moment, if we just took it away, it seems to me, Sherry, that the gun advocates really want to be able to carry their gun without the bureaucracy of going through a permit process. And I understand training is part of that. But if you just took out the training part of it, would you be okay with that?
So no, I would say it was definitely necessary to have the training component there. There are too many accidental deaths that occur. Also, this is the opportunity for a check and balance to determine the mental health ability of someone that is coming back to renew their license as well. You want to make sure that you have that 8 hours of training in place.
Some people would say that this is just a first step to eliminating guns.
Well, this is not a first step of eliminating guns. This is the first step, to me, of having the Wild Wild West. He talked about hunting and gathering. We don't do hunting and gathering within our metropolis. So when you're talking the Wild Wild West, it's irresponsible. And it's not about mandates. How do we want to have such stringent laws and rules as it relates to voting, voter suppression laws, but we don't want to have laws that
federally and on the state level.
Your constitutional rights come with responsibility.
Absolutely.
Your First Amendment right to say what you want to say.
If a person uses a firearm irresponsibly, I will be the first to have that person held accountable. Just like those 12-year-olds who shot that shotgun out the window.
The training that is necessary.
I would say the training when you buy the gun. That's the first thing.
Absolutely.
The individuals who buy the gun will seek out training, and that training will still happen.
They will not automatically seek out training.
They will seek out training.
Most people take the training as only a requirement to get the license.
They will get training whether it's mandated or not.
That's not true. Irresponsible.
It will happen.
Be right back. Coming up, we will share your thoughts. Don't forget to use the hashtag #LetItRip. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Now it's time for you to be a part of the discussion. We'll start with this one from Philip. He says, let it rip. The coach did the right thing. You get in trouble off the field and you're gone. Rico, to you, where does that play into innocent until proven guilty?
Well, I mean, it's a gray area because if you're a coach, you want to stick by your players, but how far do you stick by those players if they're accused of a heinous crime?
Let's talk about this. Kelly writes, I think that they, meaning the football players, are above the law. Nothing will happen to them. Sabrina, do you think that that's the case here?
If those tapes come back that there was just an act that was rape and you see it on tape, yeah, you need to be punished for that. And I think you would be, especially if you have tapes that say that and support that.
Okay, Ebony says, we're lackadaisical when it comes to gun legislation in our country. We wait until the death count rises before we implement any change. Sherry.
Absolutely. Sandy Hooks, Orlando, the Navy Yard. We have to be responsible. We are stewards of our living document, which is the Constitution, and that means we realize that as time change, laws must change, and we must implement safe practices to ensure all citizens are safe with training.
What about this tweet that says, criminals will get guns regardless. People need protection until the economy is stable, or maybe things will never change.
I absolutely agree 100%. Bad guys will get guns no matter what our elected representatives do up in Lansing and what they actually get passed in legislation. We need to have constitutional carry in the state of Michigan to allow all of Michigan's law-abiding citizens to have access to arms.
That's training, less carry.
Sherry, let me get you one here. Shawnee writes, how can you have gun control if just about anybody and everybody has a gun?
This is not about gun control. This is about putting laws in place to train people, to make people responsible. Yes, people have access to guns, but as we look in this country of bipartisan ways to bring about safe mechanisms and laws to put our country first, safety first, we have to realize that putting that training in place will do just that.
Very hot topics here. That is it for this edition of Let It Rip Weekend.
All right, remember, head over to our website, fox2detroit.com for the news.